Hi, I'm Jenna.
And I'm Erin.
And welcome to Between Two Filing Cabinets, where we bring you tips, trends, troubles, and stories from HR. And Erin and I both do a lot of training, and so we were talking about some of the things that can either derail a training or make it really successful. So we thought we would bring you a few tips on how to make a training successful. So Erin, why don't you start out with some of the tips that you think work?
Sure, absolutely. So one thing that you might want to do is say why you're having the training in the first place and actually communicate that to everybody, because I don't know how many times we've gone into a training room, people aren't really sure why they're there, and
Right.
kind of like, oh, okay, what are we doing now? And so it's an opportunity to really say, this is, we're making an investment in you and your professional development, or articulate why you're having the training, why it's important to the organization or your mission. It's a real opportunity. And then tied to that, if you're in a leadership position, make sure you go to it too. You know, if you're going to say why it's important and then not sit in,
Right.
you're going to lose some credibility, and so is that trainer. As far as for the person training, you know, I recommend best case or best practices be hire us.
That's a good tip.
It's a good
I like
tip,
that one.
You know, to come in. We do make it entertaining and informative. However, if you're going to be doing some internal training, some things to keep in mind would be to have it be dynamic, have it really interesting. You know, address different types of learners and focus really on your audience and knowing your audience. And so that's something that we talk about in our powerful presentation skills training, where we talk about, you know, your source of attention or your focus of attention could be on 3 different areas. It could be on you could be on your content, or it could be on your audience or your listener. And it's really tempting to focus on ourselves. We get self-conscious, maybe public speaking. That's not where we want to focus our attention. It's just going to make it worse. A lot of times, you know, I'm sure you can relate to this, kind of failed presentations or really boring presentations. It's someone who's just reading from their slides, and they are not going to digress and don't ask a question. I'm not done with the slide yet. And so that focus just on the content, you know.
I sit through a lot of legal CLEs, and you attend those, and they're quite boring. They're not dynamic. It is just someone who's reading their slides, and it's like you're just checking your watch to see like when is this thing going to be over. You have to be there because you have to get the content, and there's good information, but it's not something that's going to really resonate with me, and then unless I kind of go through my own process afterwards of really trying to figure out all of that information that's been presented, because it's not dynamic.
No, so basically when I say really kind of bad presentations, it's like the only time they'll notice the audience is if they get up to leave. And maybe then even they won't, you know. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to keep doing my thing. It has to be really interactive. Eye contact's very important, making eye contact with as many people in the audience as you can. Help them feel like you're talking to them. Volume's another important one. So you have to go louder when you're talking to a group. Help, you know, capture people's attention. So those are just a couple things that I would suggest. What about you? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, certainly for coming, like when we go on site with places, or, you know, we've been to trainings, I think there's just some basic logistical issues.
Sure.
You know, things like, and these are going to sound really obvious, but things like not scheduling on a Friday afternoon. No one's paying attention. They want to get out of there. They want to go home. So we've had that, you know, happen a couple of times. It's like, that's really not a good time.
It's like making training punishment, essentially. It's like you could start your weekend, but first you have to sit through this.
Other things, you know, making sure that, you know, just from scheduling standpoint of like, if someone, you know, if people have just worked a 12-hour shift, you know, and then you're doing an additional training on top of that at the end of their shift, they don't want to be there, they're tired, and a lot of times you see that impact other people. You know, sometimes I've done trainings where you have like kind of mixed shifts, and so, you know, some people are really engaged, and then there's people that are just like can barely keep their eyes open. I think also not scheduling, trying to like cram too much into one day. And I know we come across that a lot where, you know, a company will be like, oh, we just want to get all done one day. But I think oftentimes that's at the expense of the quality. You know, one, there's a trainer who, if they've done, you know, 4 sessions of the same session, people at the end are just not going to have the same quality. I mean, it's exhausting because you're putting everything into it. But then also if it's a long session and you're cramming it in.
There's that cognitive load.
Exactly.
You can only do so much before
Right.
people just fly right over their head.
Yeah, it's just overwhelming. They're just going to check out. We get that a lot with some of the really dense like legal topics like employment law or family leave. You got to kind of chunk those out because especially with supervisors when that HR piece isn't their normal job. Well, I mean, it is part of their normal job, but maybe not like administering family leave. So I think, that's really important to make sure that you do that. Food's always helpful. Coffee. Yeah, that usually gets people there as well. So I think those are some pretty good tips. Anything else that you can think of?
I think that's pretty good coverage, although it may be an example of what not to do during a training.
Oh, an example of what not to do in a training. That's a good one. Recently, I was doing harassment training, and right after the harassment training, I'm kind of getting things ready to go. There was a group of employees who were talking about strip clubs right after the harassment training. So maybe I was not doing enough.
Not before the harassment training, right after.
Yes, it didn't make me feel too good, but about what I had done. But yeah, that's probably not a good idea.
No. And it kind of leads into something we're going to be doing and launching in the spirit of the upcoming Oscars.
Why, hello, Jimmy.
Well, hello.
Celebrity visitor.
That's right, absolutely. And so just like the Oscars, we're going to be having our own little awards coming up throughout the month of March. You want to tell us about it?
Yeah, so we're going to be having the What Not to Do Awards. So we just gave you an example of that. Don't talk about strip clubs right after the harassment training. So we're going to be bringing you things that are plucked straight from the headlines and give you some good examples of the what not to do. Jimmy will be joining us to help present those awards. So we're going to file this under training, what to do.
What to do.
And also what not to do.
What not to do, right.
All right.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.